Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Book Nook. I'm here with the wonderful author of The Brass Queen, which was released January of this year, 2021, author Elizabeth Chatsworth. Thank you so much for joining me today, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to meet you through Zoom.
Through Zoom, exactly. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also a little bit about The Brass Queen?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, I'm a British expat. I live in Connecticut, and I've written The Brass Queen about my hometown in Sheffield in Yorkshire, England. But it's an alternate version of my hometown set in an alternate 1897, where Queen Victoria is a bit of a naughty despot, and the British Empire is running rampant over the globe, and it's a steampunk world, so lots of crazy inventions and madcap adventures to be had.
Oh, and it's such an amazing novel. You must be so proud of it.
Yes.
Speaking of the steampunk world that it's set in, what was your inspiration for this novel?
Well, Sheffield in Yorkshire is an industrial city that's based on steelworks. I wanted to take those elements and bring in the bucolic countryside that surrounds the city, that's full of aristocratic mansions and glorious countryside. So in a way, this book has a lot of the things I used to love about growing up there. It's kind of a love letter to my hometown, but set with this steampunk veneer over the top and a lot of comedy, action and romance.
Oh, I love that kind of that mismatch of you've got the industrial world and the rural world and then the blue blood world too.
Yes, absolutely. All these different worlds are colliding in the book, just as they actually did in the real 19th century.
Very true. Yeah. And what drew you to that steampunk aesthetic?
I think it's something I've always been interested in growing up in a town that's had a lot of Victorian architecture and so on. And here in America, obviously you become a little homesick. And so those things took on an even warmer glow to me. And I started to see Britain through probably rose-tinted glasses. And then I found there was a big steampunk community in America. And good folks got together at the weekends and all dressed up in pseudo-Victorian gear and had a jolly good time telling tall tales and speaking of their adventures on Mars and imaginary versions of Paris and so on. And folks love the gadgets, they love the technology, they love the costumes and the literature and the movies. And there's an entire community that exists in America and around the world that really enjoys the lighter elements of 19th century life.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like a little piece of magic in the real world.
Yes, exactly. It's good escapist fun, and particularly at the moment, I think we all need a bit of escapism. So it's nice to go to another century and have it be in this fantastical world that anything goes.
Definitely. Yeah, we could all use a bit of escapism. And I noticed behind you, you have a few is it two blunderbusses or a blunderbuss and something else?
It's two ray guns and a blunderbuss, because I think every lady needs a good arsenal behind her. Particularly imaginary ones like this. Constance's blunderbuss in the book only shoots rock salt and her ray guns disintegrate walls and so on. So although unfortunately she's carrying weapons of violence, she's not actually really doing any, well, not any permanent damage anyway.
No, yes, it's that whole lady never starts a fight, but she can finish them.
Exactly.
And you mentioned before the kind of marring or colliding of different worlds. And you've got the character Truesdale, who is a cowboy coming into this whole kind of mixing pot of country, blue blood, steampunk. What was your inspiration to bring the cowboy element into the story too?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to marry an American whilst living over here, and he is my cowboy to me and my family. That's how we think of him. He's actually brought up in Connecticut, so not a cowboy at all. But to us, from the British point of view, he's that sort of tall, dark, handsome hero kind in his manners and so forth. And it's just taking that kind of character, that sort of gung-ho American character and confident male, and putting him in this crazy alternate Sheffield where he's a fish out of water. He doesn't really know what's going on. And as well as being brought up a cowboy, he's now a US spy. So he's actually trying to spy on the steamworks where all the fantastical British inventions are created. And so he's got all these dual roles going on. And of course, he's thrown into collision with our heroine, fiery British aristocrat, Miss Constance Haltwhistle. And the conflict between those two characters, British and American, aristocrat and working class, their conflict is a source of much of the humor in the book, and their developing relationship mirrors all the misunderstandings that can come about when a male and a female, or in fact anybody from different cultures, think they're communicating but really aren't.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of kind of ships passing in the night moments that are
Yes.
very delicious. And I love the banter that you have between them. The distinctness of each of their voices, I think you captured really well, which my next question is, how do you go about capturing such distinct voices?
Well, the hope as a writer is that you've done it in such a way that people don't notice too much. They just know that they're in a chapter from this, being read from this character's point of view, because the language is just so typical of that particular character. So in The Brass Queen, Constance starts chapter 1. She's very formal. She uses a lot of words. The sentences are quite complex. And as she goes on and loosens up a bit of the character, she becomes less and less formal toward the end of the book. Whereas Truesdale, from the start, his point of view is told in very straightforward language. It's quite short sentences, it's to the point, there's not a lot of foo-foo and big words used. And so subconsciously, the reader knows just from the rhythm and so on, whose point of view characters that they're actually in that chapter. Of course, we also give other good landmarks, such as, Constance is sat on the bench, so blah, 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 mentioning the character's name right at the start gives you that anchor. And we even had a visual anchor in that each character starts with the point of view's hat actually drawn at the top of the chapter heading. So Truesdale has his cowboy hat, his Stetson, and Constance has her little tiny steampunk hat, and the villain has his crown. So there's a visual marker there too, if the language and mentioning the character didn't quite do it as well.
Oh, and I'm just, as you were saying that, I just found them so I can show them all, because you're right, they have a really beautiful description, image of each of the hats and then the crown. Oh, fantastic.
Yes, it's just a little marker there in case people need it, but also it's just fun. It's nice to have a little image just popping up when you don't expect it.
Oh, definitely. And I always get excited when I see the Constance's little hat, because her point of view is so beautiful. There's a moment when they're kind of in the thick of a stealth mission, and her biggest thought is, well, I'm an unmarried woman with an unmarried man. I need a chaperone. And you're thinking, but you're in the middle of a stealth mission. You don't need a chaperone.
Yeah, exactly. Her perspective on reality is not quite where it should be. And of course, she thinks she's the most practical person in the world, but the reader and the people around her go, what? like they're in the middle of a potential gunfight. They're being stalked by this soldier, and she happens to be hiding, crouched next to a bookcase. And there's a romance novel catches her eye, and of course she reaches out for it and starts flicking through the pages, and the people with her are like, what? And she's like, oh, she puts it back. But it's like, that's just constant. She's just off in her own little world.
Yeah, it's almost like she's got her to-do list and she's ticking them off quite happily, and it doesn't matter what's happening, because I was dressed for this occasion. I have my chainmail corset, so I'm fine here, and if the glass smashes around me, we're going to be safe. But meanwhile, people are like, we need to run.
Exactly. And a lot of the humor comes from her slightly quirky perspective.
Yes, because you could run the risk of making her a bit too untouchable, that kind of lofty air, and she's referring to Bab's etiquette book, but the way she does it, it's very comical and it's very like, oh, this is her rule book and she's trying to apply it to a world of invisible assassins and exoskeleton warriors, and which fork to use doesn't quite apply, but we can make it work.
Exactly. She just lives in this crazy, chaotic, fantastical world, and she's trying to apply rules onto it that she's picked up from an etiquette book. It just totally doesn't work, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and a lot of fun as the reader too. It's fantastic. And then speaking of Constance, and there are a few really vibrant characters throughout. Like I love the Countess, and is it Crawley, her manservant?
Yeah, Corley is Constance's loyal butler stroke manservant stroke protector, and he's this doddery old man who sort of grumbles along and just generally disapproves of everything Constance does, but of course never says anything.
No,
and
never.
She's been tottering about with him, following her about 2 steps behind since she was a toddler, and getting him into all sorts of scrapes.
And they have such a beautiful relationship too. I love when they're sitting in the carriage and she says to Truesdale, oh, just wait and let him do it. He gets cross if he doesn't open the door himself. Like, it's just those little moments show that they've been kind of the family for such a long time. But which character do you find you relate to most?
Oh gosh. Well, I hate to say it after describing how out of touch with reality Constance is, but that's probably me most of my life. I am completely clueless about just about everything in life, and I think everything works one way, and I'm invariably led to the realization that it isn't. So in Constance's just general confusion about the way everything in the world works, I guess I kind of relate to that. But I have a warm spot in my heart for all the different characters because they're all doing the best they can. There's no one in this book who's really all good or all evil. Everybody's a little bit grey, and they have their good moments and they have their bad moments, and good character traits, and ones where you just roll your eyes and go, oh no, why? To think about that. And I think that's one of the things that really appeals to me. Although they're all fantastical and extreme, they're also quite relatable because they have all the same flaws and quirks that we all do.
Yeah, and they just have cooler gadgets.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Which, speaking of gadgets, is there a favorite gadget or invention of yours, or the one that you like to write about most?
Gosh, well, I do enjoy Constance's blunderbusses. She's actually a gun designer. She doesn't think about the wider implications of designing weapons. She just focuses on the fact that they, to her, are beautiful and, of course, practical. And she designs them all in the style of flowers. So she's got a foxglove gun and a bluebell gun and so on. So she also loves flowers. So that's one of the inventions that I most love, because she creates this weapon of destruction, but totally beautifully engraved and sculpted and so on. And that's a dichotomy, that the beauty and the beast all in one invention. So I think that's one of the things I enjoy about that. And there are a bunch of different crazy inventions, because in a steampunk world, everything it turns into a sort of Rube Goldberg kind of machine. Why make it simple when you can make it complex and aesthetically gorgeous, and oh, it has bells and whistles, and just for the most simple thing, and that's just part of the fun of it all.
Oh, definitely. I think the octopus potbelly in her carriage that was also the breakfast maker.
The stove, yeah. The stove that cooks a full English breakfast. It's like, yes, of course I want a full English breakfast, and why wouldn't I have this crazy contraption that whizzes it up for me with its metal tentacles? I mean, that's wish fulfillment. Actually, I wish I had one of those.
Yes, yeah, that would be way nicer than having to do it all yourself. You just press a button, pull a lever, make sure the coal engine is fully stoked, and you've got a full English breakfast.
Exactly. Heaven.
Heaven. And were there any challenges that you faced writing in that steampunk world?
Not in terms of the aesthetics. Really, my challenges in writing this book at all were just I'd never written a book before. It's my debut, and I'd managed to reach middle age without ever having written anything since grade school. So just that learning curve of getting started was quite steep, and it took a few years, but it was definitely worth it in the end. I encourage anyone who's just starting out, wonder if they will ever actually finish a book, give it a go and keep learning and keep trying. And eventually there will be a book at the end of it. It's just, even if you're just doing a page a day or a week or a month, eventually you will have a book.
And it's wild to think this is your debut novel because it's just so beautifully written, obviously. Was there a favorite scene or section of dialogue that you really enjoyed writing?
Gosh, that's a great question. There are a lot of scenes that really touch my heart. There's a rather poignant moment in the middle of the book where Constance is full of herself and her plans and ambitions, and she's starting to develop romantic feelings toward Truesdale, but she doesn't really recognize that because it's not something she's had experience with, and she's basically clueless about most things. And she sets up a dinner for them, and she's actually making it quite romantic, and she's bringing out all the fancy cutlery and plates that have been stolen around the world by her dreadful family, her ancestors, and she's actually setting this up to be kind of a candlelit dinner. But of course, her misassumptions about what's going on and her treatment of Truesdale, she accidentally offends him, and he storms off, and she storms off, and then she ends up sitting down to this dinner alone, and one tear trickles down her cheek and hits her golden plate. And that's when you sort of realize, oh, all this pomp and circumstance and bravado she has, and she really is sensitive underneath it all. Like that for me was a poignant moment for that character.
Oh, definitely. And you get that sense too of how alone she really is. She's so flippant, like, oh, I need a husband and then I can keep my estate and everything's fine. And I have my servants. I don't need anyone else. But
Yes.
Like, who are her friends? Who's on her dance card? She doesn't really have many equals.
Exactly. I mean, most of the people around her she's paying to be there. So yeah, she's terribly alone. And that's one of the things in the end that Truesdale recognizes about her, that just for all of her sort of putting herself on her throne and lording it over folks, that she is alone, and that softens his heart, and so he reaches out toward her. So there is the start of a relationship there. I mean, and in future books, I think that will be developed more as she grows up a bit, and as he learns to appreciate that even obnoxious people can be an awful lot of fun to be around.
Oh, definitely. And your life is always more interesting with a constant halt whistle in it.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what might happen next.
Exactly. Well, and so we talked about the hats in the beginning of the chapters and mentioned the chainmail undergarments, because there is a definite focus on the different fantastic fashions throughout the book, specifically hats. Does this betray your own love of hats? And if so, do you have a favorite headpiece?
Oh gosh, I do. I love all different kinds of hats, but I particularly love steampunk hats, which can tend for women to be either very small ones, with very sort of tiny little top hats and so on, with feathers and all sorts of fancy things, up to sort of top hats with the brass goggles on and so on, and different little contraptions. And it's just fun. I mean, there's not enough situations in life today where wearing a hat is required. So being able to dress up in this pseudo-Victorian gear and wear a fancy hat just really gives you that sense of fun and play that maybe you didn't get since you were a child, dressing up in your mother's closet, unless that was just me. But you know, just trying things on and having fun. So definitely the steampunk hats are my favorites.
Yeah, it's actually the cherry on top of a person, if you think about it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it.
Oh, fantastic. And so where can we, I'm going to show the book again. Where can we find your book to buy?
Um, I like to say in all fine bookstores, and maybe some not quite so fine bookstores as well, but basically Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, Apple Books, Google Play, whether you want print, hardcover, or an ebook, it's out there. All the links are on my website at elizabethchatsworth.com. And I hope that if you do read it, that you enjoy it and enjoy an escapist moment in an alternate Victorian world with a lot of comedy and action and a few touching scenes and a lot of gadgets and amusing things for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think it's even got dogs for the dog lovers. So, which
Exactly.
Boo was an unexpected favorite of mine.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's a little Yorkshire Terrier that Constance ends up adopting. And after I wrote the book, we actually adopted a dog, a Yorkshire Terrier. So of course she was called Boudica, or Boo for short, after the dog in the book. So in this case, life followed art.
Oh, that's really cute. And so my last question for you is, you've mentioned on your website that there is a sequel coming out called The Grand Tour. Is that right?
Yes,
Yes,
the Brass Queen Grand Tour.
Brass Queen Grand Tour. And so are there any kind of hints or juicy gossip about the sequel you can share with us?
Oh, sure. Yes. The fun thing is at the moment, I'm the only one who knows what's going on. So you guys will now be the first to know. But it's essentially a heist novel in that Constance and her merry band of misfits have gone off to Europe in an airship, and they are taxed to retrieve alien artifacts from various places across Europe. By the rather shady British Museum. I won't go into the whole backstory there, but they end up having to steal these artifacts from very well protected places, sort of like Versailles and the Tower of London and so on and so forth. So they're working their way across Europe, pinching these things. And needless to say, there are plenty of people trying to stop them.
That sounds so exciting. I can't wait. And when do you see that one coming out? Have you got a release date yet?
I think it would be late 2022 or early 2023, but it is a bit flexible at the moment. I'm still writing it, so I've got a long way to go yet.
Well, and you can't rush genius. So,
well, I am hoping to write some short stories as well, just to keep folks going in the meantime, because I've got a lot of requests for stories, not just about the main characters, but about some of the side characters as well. So there's a whole universe there to explore. So I can't wait to dig in and share those stories.
oh, and would that be up on your website if people were to look for those?
Yes, but when I finish them,
Yes,
they will be there. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, there is a short story that's in the Brass Queen universe that is being published in November in the Writers of the Future anthology, volume 37, and that's actually posted on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and all those places now. So it's a short story about different characters. But it is set in that Brass Queen universe. If you want to read a short story about some of the impacts that Constance's weapons actually have in a very amusing way, this one is set in Victorian era Connecticut, then that might be something to look into, because it is written in the same vein as the Brass Queen.
Oh, exciting. Well, what I'll do is I'll put your website link and the other links that you've mentioned in the description down below. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Is there any last words? That sounds a bit ominous, but any last remarks that you'd like to share with the readers?
Well, I really appreciate your time today. I love chatting about my book and characters, and I hope that there's something that you'll find entertaining one day in your own hands. And it's such a pleasure to chat with you, Jordan. I mean, I'm looking forward to your book coming out as well. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And I just feel so blessed to be sharing this platform with such talented writers. So thank you for all you're doing to support new writers like myself.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I feel like this was a treat. I technically got to have tea with the writer of Constance Hultwhistle herself. So thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.